Hello, this is TIMJ and welcome to a new tutorial. First of all, if you want to get in contact with me, just hit me up via my website or Instagram. And by the way, I got a Patreon, so if you subscribe there, you will get a bunch of exclusive tutorials. So, hello and welcome to a new tutorial. Here's TIMJ, and this tutorial will be Houdini for Beginners number 9 with the topic noise. So here's like a little example on what we will do today, and after that specific noise video I will do another video, but that will be like an R&D video, so we can amplify like the basics we've learned here in that tutorial and amplify that on our R&D video and take that even further. So this video will drop then in the future. So here's just me changing the input. Let's go a little bit lower. And yeah, this is like a really basic example here, but you see it, we got a noise that is dependent on time. We got a Falloff, so let me plug in the grid again. We got a Falloff from like 0 to 1, so a displacement scale, a ramping scale. And we got a cool pattern. This is a double anti-alias noise, and yeah, I think we can start right away. So we will do that, and after that we will do some other stuff. Cool. First of all, let's delete that. We'll go on our object level, press tab or press right click, and type in geo for geometry. Place down a geometry node, let's call it geo noise. And with the geo noise here, we will dive inside. And after that, we'll place down a grid. So press tab again, grid. Grid is placed down, smooth wire shaded, and let's give it some extra resolution. You can do that in several ways. You can, for example, drag the rows and copy it into the columns. So just drag it, let it go, and then relative channel reference. For example, we can type in here 100, and after that you can, for example, do a subdivide. That's of course fully up to you. You can do a subdivide, or you can just bump the resolution up here. Then we will place down a null, because this will be our initial input. So in maybe geo, let's call it geo. And we got our grid. Cool. Then we will place down our point warp or attribute warp. And we will call that create maybe noise, and dive inside. So what we will need, we'll need an anti-alias noise or a noise of your choice. That's fully up to you. I will use an anti-alias noise, but of course we can take that later a little bit further. So anti-alias noise is set down. We will hook up the position to the position, and then what I want to do, I want to displace our geometry here on the left side along the normal. So we will need to place down a node called displace along normal. Grab that, and now we need to connect some wires. The position of this geometry will go into the position into the displacement along normal node, or DAN node, and the anti-alias noise will plug that into a mount, and we will plug the displaced position into the output position. And you can already see we've got our noise applied to the geometry along the normal. The cool thing is, what we can do, we can stack multiple noises together. So for example, copy that, plug that in here, get that in here, and you will get a whole different noise here. For example, 0.5, then I will make the noise time dependent, so we will make that in the next step. Place down a vector to a vector 4, pipe the position into the vector, and output vector 4, basically with a fourth component. Pipe that into position, and I will just quickly change the frequency, or make the frequency a little bit lower here. And what we can do after that, we got this fourth component, and we can plug that into the time, for example. So time, let it play, and we can make the effect a little bit stronger by raising the scale here, or we can raise the amplitude. And you can see now our noise is time dependent. That's really cool. What we can do, we currently got, like, of course, a constant input from the time, but we can manipulate that input, for example, with a multiply constant. So we can determine how fast the time will affect the noise. So if we want to go slower, just type in 0.1. Now you got a much slower noise that will evolve over time. When you need to go faster, just type in 2, and you will get something like that. So now you can basically influence your speed with that parameter here. So we now got our speed, we've got our noise. Now we can, for example, ramp the noise in a given direction with a ramping factor. We can do that with a simple, with a few simple nodes. We'll place down the relative bounding box, and we will convert the position to a float. So vector to float. And now you can choose a float value x, y, z. For example, I will choose the z value. And if we pipe that here into our scale, you can see we will get this ramping effect. The ramping effect, we can of course ramp it with a ramp parameter. So pipe that in here. Get a spline ramp. Get a multiply. So we can multiply our overall scale after that. Place down a parameter. And for example, call the parameter like mold ramp underscore scale, maybe scale. And copy that in here. Get them out. Just for an example, dive up. And now we can influence our ramp. Of course, we need to set up our mold scale here. And we can make that like a B-spline, so make it smooth, get that to the center point. And now we've got a noise. Okay, we can make that a little bit faster. 0.35. Now we've got a noise that's ramped. So we got a scale of 0 here, then the scale will rise and it will flatten again. So I think that's also pretty cool for some geometry experiments. And what you can do, of course, you can play here with the different approaches. or with the different determinations of the ramp or presets. So for example, I think the valley is also pretty cool. You get like that Falloff, so displacement, non-displacement, displacement. I think that's pretty cool too. And what you can do now, you can of course amplify that back on a larger geometry or on a more complex shape. For example, place down a sphere, get a scatter node. We will scatter some. Let's scatter some points into the into a volume. So VDB from polygons. Just get that here. I will make it a polygon. This will be a density volume. So we can scatter here in the density, maybe 25 points. Let's go for a copy the points and a box. And I want to randomize the rotation and the scale. You can do it with wax, of course. I will do it with an attribute randomize quickly 2 times here. First of all, we need to randomize not the color. That's like the default option here, or it's like in the preset. We want to randomize the N, so the normal inside sphere. So you will get a normal, a random normal direction. So that will be rand N for the rotation and rand P scale for the scale. So pipe that in here, pipe that in here. Oh, let's get rid of the standard seed. And here P scale. We can do, for example, custom ramp. And we will get something like that. Big and small cubes randomized. Of course, we can then play a little bit with the value here to get something like that. And when you then change the input above, you can of course change your overall shape. We can then convert that, for example, back to geometry. So VDB from polygons on convert VDB. Convert that back to polygons, and we will get something like a mineral shape or an abstract shape. The cool thing is what you can do, of course, you can change above here the input. You can get a box, you can get a sphere, whatever you want. You can get pig heads. A lot of pig heads here. Spheres. Of course, that's up to you. I will go for the box now, and we can of course change the input later. Let's go for a higher resolution, maybe 0.01, and what I want to do, I want to smooth that out. So VDB smooth SDF. That's a pretty cool node because you then can smooth the VDB volume. You can smooth that out with the iterations here. So for example, 50 iterations will pretty heavily affect the input form and make it much more organic, for example, and smooth it out. Or you can do like 20 and you will get a little bit of smoothing. And then you can just plug that in here, for example, and have a look how that will look. Of course, you will get some intersections here and there. That's because this noise is the Anti-Alias Noise is from a range from -0.1 to 0.1. Of course, you can fit that, Or another thing you can do, just copy the whole tree here, reconnect that, smooth that out a little bit. Of course that will be slower for now, I think. You can smooth that out and then play it. Of course it's much more slower, but you can cache it out, for example. And I think that's also pretty cool to do. So get a random shape or create a random shape or import a shape if you want. You can fully do that too. So this is the next tree here. Let's get the noise back here. Another thing what I like to do is to play with points. For example, a sphere. Make it a polygon and then just create a bunch of points. So for example, points from volume. Points from volume. Pipe that in here. Let's create some points. Let's make a null first of all here. This will be our point input. PTS in, or in PTS. Point separation, let's dial it down to get some points. And the jitter seed 0.5 and jitter scale 1. The jitter scale is to randomize the point position a little bit, because when you got like a 0 scale you will get something like that. Of course it looks cool, of course you can use it, but for now I will just pipe the jitter scale up to 1 and randomize the point position a little bit. Cool. After that you can place down a warp, add a bit warp, and you can get a noise. For example, let's go for the curl noise. Local noise. Get, for example, the position and add that to our original position. Then you can play here. Maybe something like that. Whoops. No. Let's make the frequency a constant. 0.25. And the amplitude maybe 5. So you can play around here and add different noises on top of each other, for example. So then, for example, use an Anti-Alias Noise. Use the position from the noise and pipe that into here. Make it a little bit subtle. And you can create different shapes with that. The cool thing what you can do is, when we pipe that here a little bit up to 5, we can retransform our point cloud to, for example, to an VDB mesh. So VDB from particles, and then we need to decrease our voxel size and of course our point radius scale too. For example 0.01 and 0.05. Okay, then we need a little bit more radius. 9.5 maybe? Let's go to 2.5 here, and I think we need more points. 1.5. Yeah, and then you can of course smooth it out again. Smooth it out in a good amount. and you will get a whole nother shape here. So also pretty organic, and then you can restart to, for example, amplify again your noise pattern here on top. Make it, for example, linear and get that really cool ramp between like the smooth and then our pretty displaced shape. And of course, another thing I would like to toggle here are different noise types. Of course, you can use an anti-alias noise. Another thing you can use, I like to use, is the unified noise. The unified noise static. Get the position, pipe that into the amount. Of course, maybe then you need to toggle the scale here later, and for example use the cellular noise. Make maybe a scale of 1 and you will get something like that. Please try out the hybrid terrain. I think that's pretty cool to get additional details. So you can, for example, get the hybrid terrain, or the standard is also pretty cool. So you can try that out, and then just try out different noises. For example, the alligator is a pretty, if you use it in that kind of setup, it will give you pretty abstract result, especially when you play with the periodic function or the complement function is pretty cool too. Of course, you can try that out on each different noise. The Manhattan F2 minus F1, Perlin noise, and you can try out there, of course, different noise types with and without the fractal type, hybrid terrain, standard, so FBM. That's fully up to you. And yeah, I think that's pretty cool for now. There's one other thing how you can use noise, for example. Let's get a sphere here, place down a pop network, so we will create a little particle network, and just get a point warp in here. Or a pop warp, dive inside there and use noise there. Anti-Alias noise, 3-dimensional, and pipe that out, for example, to the velocity, and just start playing. And you will get this really organic movement here. Of course, for example, when you introduce a higher amplitude, you will get something like that. And the cool thing is what you can do now, manipulate the source a little bit. Go to the birth tab, deactivate the constant activation, and activate the impulse activation on the first frame. So $FF equals 1. Source all points. Yeah, that looks good. And now, of course, use the trail, connect this polygon, $F end, and you will get something like that. Really organic form, really simple, pretty effective for abstract stuff. And the cool thing is what you can do. You can do something like that. Get the noise from our little example here. Pipe it on here. Play a little bit with the parameters. And smooth it out, for example. So you will get from that to that in a second. So you will get a little bit of a different geometry. And I think that's pretty cool too. And of course you can use different noise types here again. The Anti-Alias Noise, then of course the curl noise. And you can also play with velocity and force. You can try that out and you will get something like that. Of course curl noise is, yeah, it's pretty abstract. Of course when you then smooth it out again, it will get pretty organic in the end. But when you, for example, make a much smaller frequency, like minus 0.3, of course you will get a much more organic looking type of structure. The cool thing is here you can influence your structure. For example, the unified noise static, let's use that for example. Into position, that into here, but we need to make sure it's a 3D noise. The cellular is pretty cool. Alligator. Let's just use the anti-alias noise again. Whoops. And the velocity. And what you can do, you can influence that further with, for example, a wind. So the wind will do that in an up direction. So you can influence that a little bit. And you can try it out with force. Okay, the wind maybe 0.65. And you can see we got no amplitude on the wind, so when we will deactivate that, our particles will just rise here. But when we then enable our pop warp, they will get affected. And then you can look, for example, to get something like a coal growth. You can remesh that, of course. You can then influence it again here, or manipulate it with the attribute warp. And then, for example, what you can do, get a resample node. And that's basically how you can use noise to your advantage to create cool shapes. You can use your resample node, for example. Resample node, for example. We can use that. And then let's get a look. Okay, the points are good. Let me get the subdivision curves. We can use the resample node with a combination of a point warp, dive inside, then bind. We will import an attribute. We will import the curve U. Whoops, curve U. Pipe that out to the color. Okay. The color was just like a checker. And a curve U. Let's get a ramp here. Let's get a multiply. Let's get a parameter. And let's get a bind export. We can arrange that, multiply the final output of the ramp with a parameter and export that out to mold scale. I will copy the parameter here. Okay, that's fine. Let's change that to maybe 0.6, for example. Get a curve here. Let's make it a B-spline, so make it a little bit smoother. A polywire. In the wire radius scale, type in add mold scale. And for example, switch that 0.1. 0.5. And maybe the overall scale 0.35. Get the divisions a little bit higher, maybe 16. And then you can that and that. You can remesh basically the whole thing. Okay, maybe not 0.01. Let's have a look at 0.05. Yeah, we will go lower. 0.025. I think that's better. Yeah. Then we can smooth that out, but maybe not so much. Maybe 25, for example. Yeah, that's too much. maybe 5. Of course, again, that's fully up to you. And then what we can do, we can get our noise here back. But we will make a linear falloff. And we will change that from that to that direction. And you will get a falloff. So you will get your smooth shape and then to a more noisy shape, for example. And you can render that out. Cool, so we got that shape here. And let's do a little bit of rendering, maybe with that shape. Let's just try a different input on here. Let's try the pick head. Why not? Let's see. Oh yeah, cool. The displaced pick head. Let's try out a sphere. And let's give it, I think, a little bit more a more dynamic shape. Let's have a look here first, and what I want to do, I don't want like the valet offset, I want like a linear offset, and not from left to right, from top to bottom or bottom to top, for example, something like that. And of course then you can further manipulate that. Cool. Looking good, and I think we don't need that. And what we can use the color here, or we can make by an export an own attribute. For example, let's call it mask for rendering. So we will render that here. Let's go and make a material network, rub network, rs mats and rs out. Dive inside here, place down a redshift node. I will do some settings here. I will do global illumination. Enable that, ACCGP. That should be fine. And we need a material. So RS material RS material builder, RS mats, let's call it just test for now. And we will apply that right away. So material RS mat, shift W, drag and drop that in here. That is assigned, cool. Now maybe in light dome, RS dome 001. I will choose HDRI. Just use a simple HDRI here, and last but not least, a camera. Let's go for maybe 6:7 ratio or 4:3, I don't know, or an anamorphic. Let's just use 16:9 full HD. Let's go for longer focal length, and of course depth of field, sampling, focus distance, copy no, sampling, copy parameter, paste relative reference. COC radius for circle of confusion, make that lower, and of course a bokeh image. Cool. What we will do now, we will press render. Press the render button. And I will disable the HDRI in background. Of course you can use it, that's fully up to you. Or you can make a custom background, P3. Yes. Cool. And we can shade that, for example, a little bit. We'll use our art color user data, and we will type in mask, because we already created our mask here, and we can use that, for example, for color, just for basic color. Ramp, and you can ramp now your color here. So that's like an easy way to create like a smooth surface, and then like I like that here. Too much talking. I think it's a cool way to create like a more subtle shape, and it will then transform or morph into a more rough shape. And of course you can then play around with roughness a little bit. You can play, of course, fully around with color, try out different settings. You can move that here, you can animate that. That's fully up to you guys. You can make glass. Glass is also pretty cool, I think. And you can pipe that into the refraction. Refraction transmittance, for example, to get something like that. You can use metal, like a copper, and pipe that into reflectivity. Yeah, that's basically up to you. Or you can just use really simple material like that. And what you can do to get further detail, for example, you can place down an RS Maxon noise. Let's use the Luca here, make the scale much larger, maybe it's 3.5. Pipe that into a bump map. And what I will do, I will blend between two materials, so RS Material Blender. Then we will need two materials, RS Material 1 and 2. And we can use the bump map, for example, on that material. We will use another ramp here, pipe that into the blend color, the second material into the layer color. And pipe that into the surface. I'll just change that. 0.0025. And now you can see we've got a little bit extra detail here. So like a little bit of noise displacement into the bump input. And you can do another color here, for example. So you can then again shift colors, but now not based on the initial ramp, based on the material blender. And of course you can use another material. For example, blend from a 0.25 maybe. For example, you can blend like that. That doesn't look good. You can blend like from a non-refractive surface to a refractive surface and play around with that. That's of course, as I always say, fully up to you. You can make a close up, for example. And just play around with different colors, different patterns, make it more lighter. Another thing what you can do, what I also really like, is to use the curvature function. Pipe that, for example, into the surface now to get like a preview. 0.01, and we can use that on our upper material for the color. And we can ramp that. You can ramp that, for example, you can make it more subtle or more get in a higher contrast, get in another color, for example like a shift from gray to white, or from gray to another color, maybe like green or a really desaturated bluish tone. So I think that's enough for now. We'll take that further in the R&D series, and I hope you liked it and enjoyed. And if you got a question, hit me up and enjoy it. I will see you in the next video.